Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial, we're going to add a dispatcher servlet to our web application. Now, at the end of the last tutorial, as you saw, my application didn't run. And the reason for that was because I've copied like the previous tutorial to create this tutorial in order to preserve the source code for each step as we go along. I've got multiple projects configured under the same name on the server. So to get this to run, if I go to my servers tab here, and if that's not showing, you should be able to get it to show from the window menu somewhere. But most likely it will show if you've been running web projects. So if you go to the servers tab here and right click your server and go to add and remove, here you can see the projects that are currently configured on your server, and I'm going to remove any projects apart from the one that I want to run now, which is actually I haven't got this configured at the moment because I haven't tried to run it yet, but I'm going to remove this Spring Tutorial 51 here. Or that's not removing the project, it's just removing the run configuration from the server as far as I understand. And that will mean that when I try to run 52, which is I just copied it from 51, I'm going to be able to run it. So let's click finish. And let's just check that this runs before we go any further. So I'm going to expand web content here, go to my home.jsp, right click it and go to run on server. And yes, now we're being asked if we want to configure it. And I'll say always use this server when running this project and click finish. And hey presto. Or am I speaking too soon? Let's see. So it's loading, and there we go, there's the JSP. Okay, so now the way Spring works is it routes all requests through a dispatcher servlet. The downside of what we're going to have to do here is it's going to be a little bit complicated. So we're going to have to go through maybe another, possibly 3 tutorials before we can actually see this web project working as a Spring project. But I'm going to break it down step by step so that I'm not giving you a massive load of information all at once. And the way Spring works is it routes all requests through this dispatcher servlet. So if someone goes to their browser, tries to go to your web application, Spring will first send that request to this dispatcher servlet, and the dispatcher servlet is then going to go and look for a controller that will tell it basically what to do with that request and tell it what view to display using what data. And we're going to go through all that bit by bit, but the aim of this tutorial is just to set up that dispatcher servlet. So to do that, I'm going to right click my project and go to new, and I need to go to new servlet. So if that's not visible, just go to other and scroll down to the web section, and here we go, here's web, and select servlet and click next. And I'm going to say use an existing servlet class or JSP. I'm going to tick that box. Eclipse always changes from kind of time to time, but there's going to be something equivalent to this in your version of Eclipse, even if it's not exactly the same. Then I'll click browse here for class name and select dispatcher servlet. If that's not visible, it means that you haven't added one of the jars. So I'd recommend going back to a couple of tutorials to where we added the jars using Maven. I think it was the second tutorial in the web section, possibly. And make sure you've got the Spring Web and Spring Web MVC Maven dependencies added there, and make sure that you've updated your project as well. So I'm going to click OK here, and I will click finish. And just to explain a bit more, just in case you didn't see that, if you go to Java resources, I think it is here, and go to libraries and Maven, you should have a Spring -WebMVC here, and in there you should have org.springframework.web.servlet, and in there you should have dispatcher servlet. So if you haven't got that, then you're missing Maven dependencies, or you haven't right-clicked your project and gone to Maven update project or something like that. and for some reason, or you didn't have an internet connection, something like that, and for some reason you haven't brought in this jar, so you must have that jar there. So assuming you've got that, now if we go to web XML under webinf here, then we will have added a mapping for a dispatcher servlet here. And I'm going to change this just a little bit. If you haven't got web XML, you probably didn't select Web Dynamic Module version 2.5 when you created the project initially. So you have to make sure you do that as well. Otherwise it will give you a fancy new project that's just a little bit too fancy and doesn't use this web XML, which as far as I know everyone's still using. So here's my dispatcher servlet. It's just a servlet that's taken from the Spring jar, and it's configured to be the entry point of our project. Well, actually it isn't yet. So I'm going to change the name of it here. Let's change the display name, and I'll change it to something that makes sense for this project. It should be something lowercase and short with no funny symbols in it. So I'll just call it offers, since this is going to be a kind of website that shows offers of work. And I'm going to change the servlet name to offers. This is even more important than the display name. And the servlet name here I have to change to offers as well, because that's how it matches up this section with this one here via the servlet name. So those have to certainly match. So I've changed all these three to offers. This one isn't really important. I think if it was not there, I don't think it would affect anything that we do, although I'm not completely certain. Usually I don't bother with it. We also want to change the URL pattern here to just plain slash, because if we go to the kind of context root of the project, we want it to run this servlet by default. And finally I'm going to make it load on startup. So I'm going to go to this servlet section where it loads the servlet class here. And underneath that I'm going to hit return, and I'll use control space, and let's go to load on startup here and type 1 for the value of that element. So this tag tells it to load this servlet when it starts up, as far as I know. And now, well, there's no point running the project again because we've got a bit more to do. There's one last thing I'm going to do here though. This is, of course, this being a Spring servlet, like Spring in general, it wants to load some XML containing beans. It wants to load the context. And it's going to load it from a kind of pre-configured location. It's going to load it from the webinf directory, and the name of the XML containing our beans to load is going to be whatever name you put here, -servlet.xml. So let's right click the webinf folder and go to new, other, and I'll scroll down to the Spring section here, which we've got because we're using the Spring IDE plugin, and Spring Bean configuration file, and I'm going to click next and then call it offers, or whatever name I gave to the servlet, -servlet.xml. If you get anything wrong here, like you spell it wrong or something, then it's not going to work. So make sure you spelt this correctly and everything and put it in the right folder. I click finish, and let's try running it. It isn't going to work, but let's just run it anyway for the hell of it, really. So I'll right click the project and go to run on server, and I think it's going to tell us that there's no mapping, so it all looks healthy. It's starting up and everything, but we've got the requested resource is not available. And if we go to the console here, we've actually got a class not found exception. Yeah, so there is one more important thing that I forgot to tell you here, because although we can reference this dispatcher servlet from the Maven repository, when you run your project in Tomcat, it doesn't know where to find those jars because they're in like a Maven repository at some Maven location on your machine. Like I'm using a Mac, so it's in something like users my username.m2/repository or some location like that. And similar if you're on Windows or some other platform, those jars, the Spring jars, are going to be tucked away somewhere where the server can't get at it, so we can't actually run the project. So to get rid of this error, I'm going to right-click the project and go to Properties, and I'm going to go to Deployment Assembly here, and I'm going to click Add, and I'm going to select Java build path entries, click Next, select Maven dependencies here, click Finish, and let's click Apply and OK. And what this is going to do is when we deploy the project, it's going to automatically copy over the Maven dependencies, I guess, to this webinf.lib folder, so that the server will then be able to find them. We click OK. I think it's actually redeployed, I'm not sure. Let's right click the project and go to Run on Server again. And we're looking to not see that error. So yeah, I think it maybe was already running. Let's right click the console and go to Clear. Try once more, right click and run on server. And so we're not seeing any new error here. So I think we're good. Let's try maybe stopping it. We could go to Project Clean, and if this still looks okay, I'm going to leave it here now because we've done everything that we need to do at the moment. I'm just kind of trying to double check somehow. So right click and Run on Server. Let's try this one last time. And yeah, so now we don't see that class not found error in the console. So even after cleaning the project and restarting, it's finding that servlet. And we don't see anything here because of course we haven't yet configured enough stuff to actually get this working. But the lack of errors is saying in here, no mapping found for HTTP request with URI Spring, etc. But that doesn't matter because we're going to fix that in subsequent tutorials. So that's it for this time, and until next time, happy coding.